Hello, my darling listeners. It's me, Fiveum, back here with another charming article about right wing rhetoric, the perpetual whining and griping, and let's just say, the inability to self reflect, needing to feel victimized even while playing the aggressor. I actually improvised quite a bit in this article and this recording. A bit unusual for me, but, well, you can listen and suffer along, I guess. Let's get into this bad boy. How an organized Republican effort punishes companies for climate action. Legislators and their allies are running an aggressive campaign that uses public money and the law to pressure businesses they say are pushing quote-unquote woke causes. By David Jealous and Hiroko Tabuchi. Originally published in the New York Times on May 27, 2022. In West Virginia, the state treasurer has pulled money from BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, because the Wall Street firm has flagged climate change as an economic risk. In Texas, a new law bars the state's retirement and investment funds from doing business with companies that the state comptroller says are boycotting fossil fuels. Conservative lawmakers in 15 other states are promoting similar legislation. And officials in Utah and Idaho have assailed a major ratings agency for considering environmental risks and other factors, in addition to the balance sheet, when assessing states' creditworthiness. Across the country, Republican lawmakers and their allies have launched a campaign to try to rein in what they see as activist companies trying to reduce the greenhouse gases that are dangerously heating the planet.
We're an energy state, and energy accounts for hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue for us,
said Riley Moore, the West Virginia state treasurer.
All of our jobs come from coal and gas. I mean, this is who we are. This is part of our way of life here in the state, and they're telling us that these industries are bad. We have an existential threat here,
Mr. Moore said.
We have to fight back.
In doing so, Mr. Moore and others have pushed climate change from the scientific realm into the political battles already raging over topics like voting rights, abortion, and LGBTQ issues. In recent months, conservatives have moved beyond tough words and used legislative and financial leverage to pressure the private sector to drop climate action and any other causes they label as woke.
There is a coordinated effort to chill corporate engagement on these issues,
said Daniela Bayo Ares, chief executive of the Leadership Now Project, a nonprofit organization that wants corporations to address threats to democracy.
And it is an effective campaign. Companies are starting to go into hiding.
The pushback has been spearheaded by a group of Republican state officials that has reached out to financial organizations, facilitated media appearances, and threatened to punish companies that, among other things, divest from fossil fuels. They have worked alongside a nonprofit organization that has run television ads, dispatched roaming billboard trucks, and rented out a Times Square billboard criticizing BlackRock for championing what they call woke causes, including environmentalism. These efforts come after years during which many in the financial sector boasted that they were prioritizing environmental, social, and governance issues, also known as ESG, rather than pure profits. That activism has often put companies at odds with the Republican Party, traditionally the ally of big business. In 2015, Salesforce and other big employers threatened to leave Indiana after the state passed, and then quickly rolled back, a law that would have allowed businesses to refuse service to gay customers. Nike faced a fierce backlash for its 2018 ad featuring Colin Kaepernick, the former NFL quarterback who knelt during the national anthem to protest racism and police brutality. As the signs of a warming planet have grown more apparent over the past 5 years, in the form of destructive storms and fires, record heat and drought, and as pressure has grown from consumers and liberal groups to take action, corporations have warmed to the notion of using capital and markets to create a cleaner economy. Faith-based groups, universities, and foundations have divested from oil, gas, and coal. New York State's pension fund plans to start shedding its fossil fuel holdings. And Maine became the first state last year to require both its Treasury and its public employee pension fund to divest from fossil fuels. When President Trump declared in 2017 that he would pull the United States from the Paris Climate Accord, more than 2,000 businesses and investors, including Apple, Amazon, and Mars, signed a pledge to continue working towards climate goals. Then in 2019, a group of senior business leaders promised to redefine
the purpose of a corporation
and prioritize the environment, workers, and communities. And a record number of banks, investors, and companies at the United Nations climate talks in Glasgow last year committed to reaching net zero, the point where their activities no longer add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, by 2050. Several said they saw opportunity in investing in new kinds of technology needed to power an economy that is not based on oil, gas, or coal. Larry Fink, the chief executive of BlackRock, has been among the most outspoken executives, using his annual letter to corporate leaders to implore them to look beyond the bottom line and make a positive contribution to society. In his most recent letter, issued in January, Mr. Fink made the case for what he calls
stakeholder capitalism,
saying there is a sound business rationale for taking up the fight against climate change and imploring other companies to act.
Every company and every industry will be transformed by the transition to a net zero world,
Mr. Fink wrote.
The question is, will you lead or will you be led?
Other executives say they are unbowed by the brewing conservative backlash.
It's not going to stop me,
said Mark Bainoff, the co-founder and co-chief executive of Salesforce, and one of the most outspoken business leaders on social and political issues.
It's pretty hard to restrict or control how a CEO creates the culture of his company.
Mr. Bainoff dismissed many of the actions of conservatives as theatrics.
Politicians have to do what politicians do, which is try to get elected,
Mr. Bainoff said.
It's a lot of posturing for the base.
Republican lawmakers, however, are becoming more organized in their efforts to slow corporate progress on climate issues. Mr. Moore, the West Virginia state treasurer, coordinated a letter in November from 16 state treasurers and comptrollers to banks across the country, threatening
collective action in response to the ongoing and growing economic boycott of traditional energy production industries by U.S. financial institutions. It is our sincere hope that no financial institution will be rendered ineligible to provide banking services to our states,
the letter said. And in January, Mr. Moore pulled about $20 million out of a fund managed by BlackRock because the firm has encouraged other companies to reduce emissions. BlackRock still manages several billion for West Virginia's state retirement system.
We're divesting from BlackRock because they're divesting from us,
Mr. Moore said in an interview. In private, elected officials in conservative states have been more blunt.
These big banks are virtue. These big banks are virtue signaling because they are woke.
Gary Howell, a West Virginia state representative who sponsored a bill that would blacklist companies that have divested from fossil fuels, wrote in a February 8th email to Mr. Moore. The message was obtained by Documented, a corporate watchdog group under a Freedom of Information Act request.
They either shut up or get on the list. That is my goal,
he wrote. You know what, I'm gonna do something that I normally don't like to do. I'm just going to improvise a little bit, okay? First off, yes, I decided to keep that laugh in because, honestly, let me just reread this. It's these big banks are virtue signaling because they are woke. How many freaking buzzwords can you put in there to make yourself the victim? In fact, let's continue. Let's go back a little bit. Look at the rhetoric. So scrolling up in the New York Times article a little bit. Where is it? It's a longer article than I thought it was. Okay, so yeah, Mr. Moore said we have an existential threat here. Mr. Moore said we have to fight back. So first off, just take a look at that. We have to fight back. It's pretty common in conservative rhetoric to always paint yourself as the defender, even if you are the aggressor. But you know what? Let me improvise a little more even. Do y'all remember, well, it's probably still going on at this point, when conservatives will be like, anything that involves any sort of, economic retribution that would even be normal is cancel culture? God, it's like, oh, what's this? You received poor service, you're never coming back. That's cancel culture. But the thing about cancel culture is, whether you agree or disagree with it, it is consistent with the free market. You might think, oh, aren't these Republicans supposed to be all big on the free market? And the fact of the matter is not really when you think about it. I mean, seriously, let's think about it. It always struck me as this general unwritten rule that corporate elites, corporations being these top-down, top-down autocracies by default, they would support conservative goals. You know, American flags, that sort of thing. Like, I mean, remember, any of my American listeners, remember when Walmart was really growing big, and, you know, a lot of small business owners complained about how Walmart was pushing out their business with their, I'm going to say, unethical squeezing practices squeezing of suppliers. But of course, the Republicans mostly didn't care. Why? Well, I bet dollars to donuts was because Walmart was conservative, quote unquote. They promoted good, wholesome family values. And we as a society, whether you like it or not, you know, given these corporate autocracies more and more authority. And what's bugging conservatives is not the fact that they have all this authority. No, they're using this authority in a way they don't like. I mean, I'll be honest with you, these states divesting from companies they don't like, that is the free market. Ideally, even, that is the free market. Like, I'd say even the most idealistic free market standard would be like, yeah, you know, this is an individual or institution pulling out of a company that they don't like. And honestly, in this, I just can't stop giggling in my head. But basically, you know, through this perpetual need to feel like a victim, whenever the left, quote unquote, does it, it's cancel culture. But whenever the right does it, it's just ordinary free market shit. And honestly, just even think about it for a second. What these folks are trying to advocate for, it's not even actually changing the fundamental structure of what a corporation is. They just want corporations to serve the right people, promote the right values. And it's this general idea of like, no, you can't use your authority to benefit someone else. You have to benefit me. Oh, fucking they. But at the same time, these big bangs are virtue signaling because they are woke. Like, I always thought that virtue signaling was, you know, lip service. You know, like, I don't know, putting up, actually, yeah, it is June 1st, well, it's almost June 1st. Almost June, as I record this. What was it? Yeah, it's like, you know, they put up a pride flag, and that's it. Like, that could be virtue signaling, because it's just, you know, changing the window dressing. But in this case, you know, literally divesting from an industry, that's putting your money where your mouth is. In fact, let me check something real fast. So let's see. I'm looking at the biggest employers in the state of West Virginia. Or, you know what, biggest employers, industries. Not biggest companies, but like biggest industries. As in, how many people actually use coal? So let's see. Alright, so from the World Atlas, mining is about... Wait a second. In 2016, the mining industry of West Virginia employed about 12,566 West Virginians, translating to 1.8% of the total workforce. Oh my god. Let's see. Manufacturing is about 6.48% of the state's workforce. Agriculture is about, where is the, I can't find a number for that. Then you got the service industry and tourism, which, it doesn't seem to say, okay, you know, it doesn't say much. But I just need to comment on the fact that barely any of West Virginia's workforce is employed in mining anymore. I get it, it sucks. But the truth of the matter is that, one, coal isn't as profitable as it used to be, and two, a lot of coal is strip mined. I'm trying to recall the differences off the top of my head, but think of it like this, alright? Strip mining is much cheaper, it requires fewer miners. You got like the classic mining, which is, you know, you have these people, human beings, going into the mines and pulling stuff out. That does require a lot of hands, even if you automate a lot of it. But with strip mining, it's rather what you do is you take the stuff that's already outside, usually at the top of a mountain, you need much fewer hands to just kind of, I think for lack of a better word, kind of blow off the top and cause a natural avalanche or some sort that causes a bunch of minerals to move naturally down, with gravity of course, into these, containers to be processed later. These then very large containers, which are much more than any single person could pull out from a mine, are then kind of cleaned up and refined and It's where you get the coal from. It's just much cheaper to strip mine than to do traditional mining. But at the same time, that doesn't seem to matter to this Yutz in charge of, well, the Yutz is in charge of West Virginia at the moment. It's this romanticized ideal of the coal miners. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they're excluding all the literal violent uprisings that the coal mine workers used to get their rights. I was like, you load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. I say, Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Do, 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 do. What was I saying again? This is why I don't improvise. I don't like improvising. I get into a weird stream of consciousness rambling, lose track of myself. Truth be told, I'm probably going to keep this entire thing in just so y'all can listen and suffer with me. Let's see. Let me try to recall what I was saying. So it doesn't really matter what the reality is, so long as these right-wing schmucks can portray themselves as the victims and, feel smug while their own state withers. And honestly, it freaking sucks that West Virginia's going through so many issues. Trying to revive dead industry won't help, all right? It sucks to hear it, but I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what the proper deal is with, what the proper, cure, for lack of a better word, for West Virginia's economic ills is. But at the same time, you'd assume this is what the free market was for, that, with an ideally free market, some new industry would be able to pick up the slack and would benefit from having a large pool of unemployed people to hire from because they can't negotiate as readily. Yeah, life can suck at times, and that's why you make yourself feel victimized by the institutions that you spent decades propping up, so that way you can keep your constituents high on copium. Let's get back to this thing. Mr. Howell did not respond to a request for comment. Idaho's top elected officials, including the governor and entire congressional delegation, sent a letter last week to the chief executive of S&P Global, the ratings agency, objecting to the company's use of ESG metrics in its rankings of states.
It is impossible for the state of Idaho not to conclude that S&P has adopted a politicized ratings system,
the Republicans wrote. Officials in other states, including Utah, have sent similar letters. Curtis Loftus, the South Carolina state treasurer, emailed senior executives at J.P. Morgan on September 1st and warned banks to
stay out of political culture wars and particularly abstain from the petty, woke, cancel culture.
Remember, kids, it's only cancel culture if it aligns with the leftist agenda. If I, the conservative average Joe, cannot use it to penalize those who do not comply with my social order, well, then it's perfectly okay. That's just the free market. But when anyone uses the free market in a way I don't like, when in this great voluntary association, people voluntarily choose to not associate with someone they dislike, well, that's clearly the cancel culture. But remember, it's okay when I do it. I fucking vey. That's what these guys sound like to me. Mr. Fink of BlackRock has emerged as a main target of conservatives. Last June, BlackRock joined with Vanguard and State Street to help an activist hedge fund, Engine Number 1, win 3 seats on the board of Exxon with the goal of pushing the energy giant to reduce its carbon footprint. Months later, a nonprofit group called Consumers Research received an influx of funding from undisclosed donors and began running ads attacking Mr. Fink. Will Heald, executive director of Consumers Research, told CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, in February that Mr. Fink and BlackRock had
helped vote on 3 radical environmentalists to the board of directors of Exxon, whose stated goal is to get that company not focused on serving American consumers affordable gas, but Larry Fink's personal politics.
I don't know who these 3 guys are. Can't speak for how radical they are. Honestly, they're probably extremely moderate. It's literally Exxon. But you see, this is the interesting part because it shows you just how quickly the right is willing to go against the free markets that they've propped up for years, basically saying like, what? A company is internally acting in a way that I don't approve of? It's like, well, I mean, yes, okay, this is the free market. Companies are supposed to settle their decisions internally. If we had the government do it, that would be big government. But now, the companies are acting in a way that I don't like. It's like, seriously, I'm about to do an annoying voice, but you know what, screw it. It's like these guys who are normally, they act so tough, is like, the state's just a bunch of big bullies. You can't trust the state. You gotta trust the free market. And then the free market's like, being woke is profitable. And then these same guys will go like, wah, state, free market was mean to me. Use your powers, use your immense powers that I've demonized, but this time to help me. And like, that's the thing. They're not mad that it's happening. They're mad. I'm gonna adjust my chair. They are mad that it's happening and it's not benefiting them. And that's the thing. They're not mad that it's happening. They're mad that it's not specifically benefiting them. And it's annoying me a lot. People familiar with BlackRock said the pressure was not changing the firm's investment strategy, but the company has scrambled to limit the fallout in states like Texas, stressing that it is following the wishes of its clients and investing broadly.
We are perhaps the world's largest investor in fossil fuel companies, and as a long-term investor in these companies, we want to see these companies succeed and prosper.
BlackRock's head of external affairs, Dahlia Blass, wrote in a letter to Texas regulators in January. BlackRock, on behalf of its clients, had $250 billion in assets invested in fossil fuel companies around the world, with $91 billion invested in Texas fossil fuel companies alone. Ms. Blass stressed, listing BlackRock's sizable holdings in Texas energy companies, including ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and Kinder Morgan. BlackRock also this month said it would support fewer shareholder proposals calling for climate action because
we do not consider them to be consistent with our clients' long-term financial interests.
In a statement, BlackRock said it was
committed to engaging with all stakeholders to ensure they understand our investment decisions are driven by just one thing, our fiduciary duty to our clients.
Casey Harrell, a senior strategist at the Sunrise Project, a climate advocacy group, said,
BlackRock is trying to have it all ways, acting like it is trying to please everyone.
The efforts appear to be having an impact beyond BlackRock as well. At the annual meetings of big banks and oil companies, including BP, ConocoPhillips, and Citi, shareholders voted down climate proposals that would have slowed investments in fossil fuel projects. As the stock markets sink and concerns about inflation grow, the pushback against environmental, social, and governance concerns is spreading. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, waded into the debate.
ESG is a scam,
he said on Twitter this month.
It has been weaponized by phony social justice warriors.
Shortly after that, he shared a meme that declared an ESG score
determines how compliant your business is with the leftist agenda.
Okay, I really shouldn't say this, but fuck it. I'm annoyed enough anyway. Believe it or not, I'm actually a moderator on a conservative Discord server. I did not apply to be a moderator. They asked me. They jokingly refer to me as the diversity hire. Apparently the admins there, they know I'm a lefty, but they liked my attitude. Truth be told, I'm a member of that server trying to better understand the conservative mindset. And I remember talking to some of the folks there about ESGs. And the thing about the ESG score, regardless of whether you think it's good or bad, it's the free market. I mean, think about it. There's no, government agency or even any other sort of agency forcing anyone to abide by ESG scores. It's, individuals or institutions who are voluntarily choosing to abide by it because that's the free market. But the folks on that server, despite many of them talking about how great capitalism is, will in the next breath talk about how ESG scores are some sort of attempt to force, communism or some sort of left-wing agenda down our throats. And the thing is the members there, these memories are just annoying me. They were just incapable of accepting that the free market doesn't have to support their values. It had to be something corrupting this monolithic, maybe shibboleth? Maybe shibboleth, I'll just go with that. Shibboleth sounds funnier. This shibboleth the shibboleth representing the free market that's never really existed in the first place. The one that they've given life to because they just kind of believe it to be there. And the fact that it doesn't come there The fact that it doesn't show up, it somehow proves to them that it must have been corrupted by the nebulous leftist agenda. And last week, the global head of responsible investments for HSBC Asset Management, Stuart Kirk, made a provocative presentation titled,
"Why Investors Need Not Worry About Climate Risk,"
at a Financial Times event in London. Describing climate risk as a problem in the far-off future, Mr. Kirk said,
"Climate change is not a financial risk that we need worry about,"
adding,
"Who cares if Miami is 6 meters underwater in 100 years?
That view is at odds with the findings of the world's leading climate scientists. A major United Nations report warned last month that the world could reach a threshold by the end of this decade beyond which the dangers of global warming, including worsening floods, droughts, and wildfires, will grow considerably. In 2021, there were 20 weather or climate-related disasters in the United States that each cost more than $1 billion in losses, according to the federal government." On social media, Mr. Kirk was celebrated by some and derided by others. Top executives at the bank said his words did not reflect HSBC's position. The Financial Times reported that Mr. Kirk had been suspended pending an internal investigation, something HSBC would not confirm. In a LinkedIn post, Noel Quinn, HSBC's group chief executive, repeated the bank's commitment to climate change.
"Our ambition is to be the leading bank supporting the global economy in the transition to net zero,"
he said. When you think about it, this entire article is a fascinating look into the rhetoric of the right wing and the feeling of powerlessness. It's this consistent theme in right-wing rhetoric, this idea that we are the victims of the nebulous left-wing establishment that excludes us from any real power. Even as conservative whining manages to succeed in pressuring companies to conform, the fact that the conservative collective, raison d'etre, asabia, well, whatever the proper word is for the thing that unites a group of people, conservatives in the USA need to feel perpetually powerless, even if they're in charge. They'll simultaneously whine nonstop while using the rhetoric of nonstop winning. Because sooner or later they will win, and you gotta win elections eventually, and when they do, they'll have to craft a bigger, badder establishment to feel excluded from. I'd say lefties need a better way to call out that BS. And, well, when people inevitably whine about it, roast them some more. If you have any ideas for this, let me know in the comments. Also, please smash that MF like button, and share this with your friends to give me that dopamine rush. Also, please subscribe so I can get enough subs to change my ugly default YouTube URL. Or don't. I'm not your boss. I'm just Fiveum. And right now, I'm signing off.